Hi, this is Chris Laughton, and I'm with Intuitive Health. And this is Jim Hall. He's a good friend of mine, and we're here. One, I'm going to just speak for 2 seconds about myself and why I'm up here. I'm an intuitive healer, and I have a website. It's called Intuit Health with a number 2 in the middle of that. And my job, I feel, that I'm trying to step into is to help empower people to realize the power within themselves, to get themselves healthy and stay that way. But part of that, being an intuitive healer, is that I see things that maybe other people don't, as far as people's energy, and also maybe people who have already left the planet, spirits, and different kinds of energy. So that's where Jim comes in. We're good friends, but he also has a infinity for maybe proving or disproving what's with us from the other side, or maybe things that linger here. Right. I don't know which way to come at it, so that's why I'm saying both. So we'll probably, what is paranormal child? Okay, be patient out there. It's been 1 minute. We have a lot to talk about. We'll cover that. Hopefully Jim will be able to answer all your questions, and hopefully I'll have enough questions to cover all the bases. We're going to just keep it he and I for a little while because we have a lot to talk about. Certainly you're welcome to come in and ask questions. One thing that I try to keep a balance on up here with doing Blab is to pay attention to what's going on between our conversation and to also, okay, hold on, hold on. We're gonna stay up here for a little bit, just the two of us, so we can get some information out and discuss what's going on. And then we'll open up the seats so that everybody can take their turn and we can have a discussion. The one thing that I do want to mention is we're up here to get information out and for entertainment and to make the conversation interesting, but all conversations up here are to be constructive. You can have a different point of view. That's great. We all enjoy that. But there's always needs to be a level of respect between everybody, even if you have a difference of opinion. That's my thing up here. So, I'm going to give it over to you for 2 seconds, Jim. If you can just tell us a little bit about yourself in regards to why we're here.
Okay. Well, first of all, my name is Jim Hall. I am currently a 8th grade science teacher. I've been doing that for 10 years. I am formerly the co-founder and co-director of Haunted North Carolina, which was a paranormal research group based here, of course, in North Carolina. It's still around. I'm not affiliated with it anymore and haven't been affiliated with the field in probably 3 or 4 years now. But the reason I'm here, the reason you asked me here, is just to talk about paranormal research and what got me started in it, going all the way back to when I was a child and the houses I lived in, where we experienced, a significant amount of paranormal activity. So we'll talk about that today, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. One promise I will make to you all right now. I'm a straight shooter. I will give you the honest answer, even if it's not the answer that you necessarily want to hear, or if it's not the most interesting answer. I will be totally straight with you.
Awesome. So my first question, well, I have one question for myself that doesn't have to do with growing up yet, because I noticed yesterday I was doing a little bit of Jim Hall research, and and I noticed that your original name for the paranormal investigative group was, what was it, 7?
All right. So a little bit of explanation. Haunted North Carolina. All right. Backing this way up. 7 Paranormal Research was started in 1992 by 2 women named Katie Harrington and Janet Bogus. And they ran it all the way up until 2000, 2001. I joined the group in 2001. We worked together for about 2 years, and then they both decided they wanted to leave, and they turned the group over to me. At which point, myself, David Gurney, Waverly Hawthorne, the people that were involved at that point in time, decided, since there were none of the original members around anyway, we wanted to sort of rebrand and refocus and do our own thing. So we changed the name to Haunted North Carolina at that point in 2002.
Okay, cool. Because I was curious about that. I didn't know if it had any meaning to you, the first name.
No, it had a meaning to the women that started the group, but by the time I joined, they had forgotten what that original meaning was.
Oh, geez. All right.
Yeah, they can explain what 7 meant. I can explain what 7 meant. I got tired of answering the question, and so we just decided it was time just to make a clean break and start and do our own thing.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so a little bit of story of part of why I asked Jim to be here is a little while ago, he sent me a couple of pictures, and Jim can be this way. He doesn't quite tell you what the backstory is because he wants you to, everything is a little bit of a quiz to see where the authentic part comes in. So here's
I was trying to eliminate confirmation bias.
I know. I don't blame you. I think it's great. That's your analytical mind, and I think that that's necessary in this environment because that word woo-woo that people in this circle kind of know the definition of, you got to, find that balance between the woo-woo and what's real. So I respect that. In the 2 houses that he sent me, the pictures of, he didn't explain to me what they were. We'll take a break in 2 seconds. I'm going to stick with my thought, and then we'll answer the questions in between because I get distracted, and if I start reading, then I forget what I'm saying. The two homes that you sent me, I wasn't aware of until I started looking at them, that there was stuff that I could feel coming off of the pictures as far as a history of some paranormal stuff going on. So if you wouldn't mind sharing whatever you want to about, because I'm assuming, of course, the beginning of living in these homes and having the experiences that you had later in life, guided you into what you wanted to do next as far as investigating the paranormal. So what experiences did you have? What was, maybe the beginning of what it felt like, and then, what happened?
Okay, so I'm from a small town in western Tennessee called Huntington, Tennessee. It's in Carroll County, Tennessee. And we lived, it's actually a very small town, and funnily enough, we lived in 3 different houses that were all within walking distance to each other. We moved around a lot to houses within, a few blocks of each other. The first house that we lived in when I was a baby, a toddler. Now, some of this information I'm going to give you is secondhand from my brothers and from my mom, stories that they told me growing up. Some of it I actually do remember myself. The first house we lived in, we started experiencing what would be described as poltergeist activity, objects moving on their own, knickknacks flying off of shelves. And when I say flying off shelves, I don't mean falling off a shelf. I mean literally out into the middle of the room, dropping, cutlery and dishes hopping up out of the sink, things like that. We lived at that house until I was about 4 years old. Then we moved to a second house. I don't know if
I want to interrupt for 2 seconds. The first house, which one? What was that? The brick one or the white one?
The brick one.
Okay.
I don't know if it's possible for you to put those pictures up that I sent you. But
yeah, while you're talking, I don't know if I can. Does anybody out there know a way that I can put the pictures? Actually, well, I have them on my phone. I might be able to just put them in front of my camera.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll do that. So we lived in what you're going to see and hopefully see in a minute, the brick home. And that's the stuff that was related to me, by my older brothers, by my mom. This weird stuff that's going on. My dad was always, a naysayer. I don't even say skeptic because he didn't approach it with an open mind at all. He was always, well, there's got to be something, maybe we're experiencing tremors or something like that. So my dad never bought into any of that. When I was about 4 years old, we moved into a house about 2 blocks away. I have no idea why. I was too young to be part of that particular Okay, so that's the brick home right there. That's in Huntington, Tennessee, and hopefully we're not going to get in trouble because you can't make out the address or anything.
Right.
The second house, the White House that you'll see in a second, we moved into when I was 4 years old, and this is where my memories start to pick up. It had an attic loft that me and my two brothers, my oldest brother Richard and my middle brother Greg, we all shared. Richard, by that point in time, was getting ready to go off to college, and so he was in and out of the house a lot. Mostly my brother Greg and I stayed there, and I distinctly remember. Sorry. There it is. Yeah, so that's the second house we lived in, and you can see that attic loft up there, and that was our room. That's where we lived. And I distinctly remember that the poltergeist activity continued at this house. Knickknacks, like I said, flying off the shelves. And up in the attic loft where we lived, my brother and I would hear footsteps, and we would, I would probably been about 4 or 5 years old. He was about 5 years older than me, so he'd have been 9 or 10. And, I'd crawl into bed with him, and we'd hide under the covers, and we'd hear footsteps walk right over to the bed, peek out. There would be nothing there. Eventually what happened, and this is where the story gets dramatic, and I'm going to give you the account that I grew up with, and then I'm going to give you my adult, rational, looking back on it point of view as well.
Your experience as a child, was it what you were told, or is it what you actually remember?
Okay, in this house, I remember it. I remember this happening. I remember being terrified of that room. I remember one time it was like two separate sections. There was one section that was like the playroom that was kind of closed off. And I remember one time just going in there, and every toy we had, everything in that room was just scattered. It looked like a tornado had been through there. Eventually my brother, who had plans at that point, he would have been just going into college, but he already had plans to be a minister. So he had plans to go into seminary, decided that he was going to go upstairs and he was going to take a Bible and he was going to pray. And when he did so, just, no pun intended, all hell broke loose. He went upstairs, he prayed the 23rd Psalm, winds blowing with the windows closed, things flying around, and everything stopped after that. Now that was what version of the story that I grew up with. If I had to investigate this case now, if I was called in to investigate these two homes and whatnot, my initial thoughts would probably be that it was not a spirit or a demon or anything like that. It was probably, what we think poltergeist activity is now is actually a human agent. It's someone who's manipulating their environment subconsciously, not realizing that they're doing it. And my oldest brother, would have been about the right age. We did have a very tumultuous household at the time because my mom and my dad were splitting up. They were going through a divorce. My dad at the time was not the nicest guy in the world. I don't want to get too deep into all that stuff, but there was definitely some bad stuff going on, non-paranormal in the house. And that fits all the criteria for there to be a classic human agent poltergeist type haunting. Now, what happened is, whether or not you believe me, whether or not you believe those stories, whether or not I believe those stories, what that did is that brought me up as a child, firmly believing in the supernatural and that these things happened and having an interest in it. And so as I got older, as I became an adult, I decided I wanted to start, trying to figure out what was actually going on. I wanted to start approaching it scientifically and figuring out, if these things really do happen, what is the cause and what's really happening.
Lola, I'm sorry. We're going to just wait a few minutes to let people come up to take the seats, just so we're going to get our talk done, and then I'll have people come up and I'd love to have people come up and make conversation. No problem, Lola, at all. So when I looked at the house, the things that I saw was something that was so deep rooted below, like not a spirit, but something to do with like what the house was on. If you've ever had, I was wondering if you ever had that feeling, that, because it didn't feel like it was. Did you have any experiences after you did that Like your brother did the cleansing or whatever you want to call it?
No.
It was
it stopped at that point. As a matter of fact, we moved a third time, and the third house we lived in before we finally moved out of Tennessee altogether, we never experienced anything at all in that house. That house never had one single incident.
So in saying that, what you're feeling as an adult, it was something created by the energy of the house, like the energy of the people in the house?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. As an adult looking back on it, I do not think that it was ghosts or spirits or anything like that. I think it was probably my oldest brother, who would have been at just the right age to be experiencing what the modern interpretation of poltergeist activity, which is a human agent that somehow subconsciously is influencing their environment. Like I said, there was a lot of emotional turmoil in the house. All of the things that we look at now as being ingredients. And if people aren't aware of what we're talking about, there are great books. One's called The Poltergeist. It's by William Roll. You can look the stuff up, but the modern hypothesis on some of these types of haunting is that when you're experiencing PK, psychokinesis, that's not a ghost or a spirit or a demon or anything otherworldly. It's somehow a human being in the environment, influencing the environment through some unknown mechanism to make things move without touching it. What the mechanism is, that, like I said, that's unknown at this point. That's what science is trying to find out now.
I'm wondering, this is really interesting to me because it's a coming at it in a different direction that answers a few questions for myself, because I think one of the ingredients would be emotion, someone's emotion that are setting off the energy that maybe is already in the house. Because I'm curious to think that what if there's already stuff there that's kind of dormant in the person who, with this high vibration or high upset emotional vibration that they put out, kind of triggers what's already in the environment. That would be one of my questions. And also I have a friend of mine who's always complaining that things are happening like that in her house, and things flying out of cabinets or lights going on and off or all this stuff. And when I looked at her situation, that was exactly what I said to her. She thought I was crazy, and I had never really thought about it up until then. I said, I think you're doing this. And she said, what do you mean I'm doing it? And I said, it feels like you're doing this. Like, how you have the power to do this, I have no idea. And it wasn't intentional, of course. But also in the household, her husband was in the process of dying. And so the emotion in her house was very volatile. So I just find what you say really interesting. It kind of adds another ingredient to my perspective too.
So it's possible that there may be something already pre-existing in the environment. I think I said in one of the texts that I sent you when I sent you that picture that the one house, the white one, the second one we lived in, every time I pass through my hometown, that house is for sale. People don't stay there. And so it's possible there may be something there in the environment that sort of interacts under the right circumstances. The thing about human agents and poltergeist activity, I think that there is not tremendous evidence, but there is evidence to support that. One of the last cases that we investigated, or that I investigated as part of Haunted North Carolina, involved a house on the Fort Bragg complex, and it was a wife whose husband was deployed, and she was reporting that she was scared to stay in the house. There was all kinds of things, and she was seeing shadows. She was experiencing things moving around the house while her husband was deployed. And while we were there, I performed an experiment where I hung. Took one of her own necklaces, and I hung it so that it would just lay still, and we turned the air conditioning off and stuff like that, so there wouldn't be anything influencing this pendulum. And I talked to her, and I asked her to try to focus on the pendulum and make it move. And I knew when I did that, or strongly suspected when I did that nothing was going to happen. That was the control part of the experiment. As I said, focus on this pendulum, try to make this pendulum move, and it never moved. And after about 2 minutes of that, I redirected the conversation. I started talking about her husband, and I started asking her questions about how she feel when he's away. Is she worried for him? Is she worried for the family? This, that, and the other. And when her focus was taken away from the pendulum and she started talking about the things that were impacting her emotionally, pendulum started swinging.
Yeah.
And I was able to show her that and said, you don't have a ghost in your house. There's nothing for you to be scared of. This is you. This is your emotional state that's doing this. It's nothing to worry about. Your emotional state is completely understandable, but you don't have to worry about Casper in your house messing with you. Right. And it was able to sort of some degree of comfort. But so I definitely do think there's something to that. Now, can there be environmental factors that amplify that? Sure, I think that's possible, and I think that may be what the case was when I was growing up.
So that makes me wonder what you just said, something about like you don't have to worry because Casper's not in your house. But to me, I would be more scared if I knew that the people I was living with were creating this. For me, I'd prefer to have some like ghost in my house than someone who is creating that much energy to do that. I just left a job that I had about 4 months ago. I quit my job, and towards the end of it, I was really angry about being there. And there was a person in the house I was pissed at the time, and she was very negative. And I walked into the bathroom, and there was nobody there but me. I walked into to go to the bathroom, and I flipped the switch on, and at the same time, I said, "Fucking bitch," and I went like that. But at the same time, I turned the light on. All the lights blew out. So like in the bathroom, all the lights over the thing blew out. And so, I think of stuff like that, I figured that there was something I felt like I created that situation because I was angry and I put my anger right into the switch while I was turning it on, But just thinking about that it makes me more uncomfortable than the thought of being hunted. So,
well, what I would always tell people whenever we investigate these sorts of things, and that's what we suspected the cause was a human agent. Number one, it's not like the movies. You don't have superpowers. It's not like the X-Men that you can suddenly control things and make them. It's called RSPK, which means random spontaneous psychokinesis. It's totally random. You don't know when it's going to happen. It's usually at heightened emotional states, and it's usually not that major. You're not bringing the house crashing down around you. You might send a coffee mug flying across the room.
Like static like if you have a connection with static electricity,
right?
You know what I mean? That spontaneous spark that happens after things have been. We don't see it so much down here in the south, but like going up north, that you just touch things in the winter and you get a spark.
Right. So, are you going to spend your time obsessing over whether or not you're going to get a static electricity spark in your house? No. I mean, it's either going to happen or it's not, and there's not a whole lot you can do to control it, and you'll learn to live with it. Right.
And also, I was thinking of the accumulation. You know what I mean? It doesn't happen all the time. It's the accumulation of energy that lets the spark go off to release the energy. So, so as an adult, or even as a child, you were fearful at times of what was going on. As an adult, when you do investigations, does your mind revisit or even your body, like the feelings in your body, revisit some of the fear that you experienced as a child when you were investigating?
Well, keep in mind, it's been, like I said, 3 or 4 years. I've lost track since I've done an investigation. But even then, no, not really. The fear part of it probably ended sometime in my teens. And the progression here is I didn't, start off as a super skeptical scientific investigator when I was 16 years old. When I was 16 years old, I was going out with my friends to, that bridge down the road that, legend says you can hear a baby crying at midnight. And we were trying to spook each other and, just trying to experience something supernatural. And then, yeah, fear was part of it. But when I got into my 20s and started taking the research more seriously and actually started going to the Rhine Research Center in Durham and doing actual, reading books by people who had done paranormal scientific research and talking to people and attending lectures there. And I started to approach it more scientifically. And as I started to, sort of think of things more skeptically, the fear did go out of it. And it got to the point now where if somebody talks about being scared on paranormal investigation, I can sort of use that as a metric to say, okay, you've probably not been on too many, because an actual investigation, it's a field investigation. It's just like any other type of observational science. If you were going out whale watching, you wouldn't be scared when you saw a whale off in the distance, maybe if it was attacking a boat. But so, what we're trying to do when we do these investigations is we're trying to be there at the right place and right time when an event happens. If we're fortunate enough to experience an event, then we're trying to record data about the environment at the time so that we can start looking for correlations. It's actually very, very dry, very boring, involves afterwards hours and hours of looking at data and looking at, listening to audio with nothing on it, looking at video with nothing on it. It's actually very, very dry, not exciting at all. Fear doesn't really come into it anymore.
Right. I've been out a couple times with you, and I remember that it's very organized and very step by step, and this is what we do. And yeah, so I see where it comes from that point. Well, cool. I think I'm going to try to do this for an hour. We've been talking for 30 minutes. I'm going to open the seats. So if anybody wants to come in.
Okay.
Can you go to P? I'm sorry.
While we're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and answer Durham Skyrider's question. We were one of the first groups to investigate Stagville Plantation. We did have an event there. It wasn't a separate event. It was part of their, I can't remember. It was one of their holiday events. It might have been, I think it was probably Halloween, because that seems most likely, where we did have like a separate station set up where we talked to people and, showed like pictures that we had taken there and video that we had captured there. There have been other groups that have come after us that have done events there. That was always kind of the trend with Haunted North Carolina, is because, we would investigate someplace and then lots of other people would follow. We were kind of trendsetters, if I can toot my own horn there for a second. But yeah, yes, we did investigate Stagville.
So
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I was just going to say that one of our long-term members actually started off as a docent at Stagville. That's how we met her. Was that she's the one that called us out there to investigate it to begin with, and ended up working very closely with her, and she ended up joining the team. So besides your childhood story that you experienced, what's been the most profound real experience, that you've been able to prove was a real event in your experience since you were a child? You know what I mean? In your adult life? There's a few that I can pull from. I'm going to tell you the story of, and this is actually, it's been a long time since I've even gone to the Haunted North Carolina website. I assume that it's still up and they still have some of our old evidence. If not, I can try and locate it on one of my old computer's hard drives. But it's what we call the holy shit picture. There was, before I had joined Seven Paranormal Research, they had done an investigation at a cemetery in Carthage, North Carolina, called Cross Hill Cemetery. And they had gotten a picture of what they called the Blue Lady, which is where they were taking a picture of this one particular gravestone that was very decorated. For some reason, some people had decorated this one gravestone with pinwheels and with toys and things like that. It was actually kind of cute. And they'd taken a picture there, and they'd gotten a very blurry image of a woman in a blue dress. It is clearly a woman in a blue dress, but the individual features are very, very blurry. Well, years and years later, we were just having a meeting at one person's house that lived in Carthage, and we decided we just wanted to go out and investigate somewhere. I normally did not like to go out and investigate cemeteries because I don't see any particular reason why a cemetery would be haunted as opposed to any other place, and it just seemed kind of cliche. And but we were this wasn't an organized investigation. We weren't prepared for anything, so we just said, okay, let's go out to Cross Hill and let's find that gravestone. And we found the gravestone. It was very easy to find because, like I said, there was crazy decorations all over it. And one of our members, David Gurney, was a diviner, and so he had divining rods and he had pendulums and that kind of stuff. And I was very, very skeptical of all this stuff. I've always been the Scully of the group. I've always been the ones like, yeah, okay, yeah, David, you divine the spirit, okay, whatever. And so go out there, and there were 4 or 5 of us. I can't remember the exact number, but anyway, one person was taking pictures. David has divining rods, and I had this pendulum. And the first picture you see of me is holding this pendulum up, and it's almost like I'm holding a dirty diaper. I'm just like, what am I doing with this thing? And the idea behind divining is not the spirits manipulating the divining rods or the pendulum. It's that you're receiving information, and subconsciously you're influencing it. So the idea with a pendulum is that if you ask a question, is there a spirit here, and it starts swinging this way and that, it's that you're subconsciously doing the swinging because you're getting information. It's not that the spirit itself is swinging it back and forth. That's the hypothesis anyway. So we go to this one website, and I don't want to give out her full name. If you go to Crossville Cemetery, you'll find the gravestone, and the first name is Pearl. And we're asking questions, and one person says, asks David to point to Pearl, and both his divining rods swing and point toward me. And I was like, yeah, that's clever. And then the pendulum's swinging. I'm like, okay, well, that's just it's cold out here. My hand's unsteady. and so we keep asking questions like, Pearl, are you here? Pearl, are you here? And then finally the pendulum swings and stays at an angle about like this. And there is an actual photograph of this. It's the holy shit picture. Because I'm standing there with this thing that I was formerly like holding with such disdain. Like I'm holding a dirty diaper, and I'm going, guys. And one of the people came around and looks at it, and he goes, holy shit. And at that exact moment, somebody took a picture. So you see this picture of me going, with the pendulum hanging like this, and someone on the other side going, and yeah, so that's the holy shit picture. That was pretty compelling evidence right there.
That's awesome.
I mean, there was other little things that happened during investigations. There were other personal experiences. There was one time when I was in college that I experienced a sleep paralysis, which we now know is a medical thing. But you would ask if the fear ever enters into it. That was probably the last time I was really scared. When I woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't move, and it felt like there was something on my back weighing me down, and this, that, and the other. But like I said, we know now that there's a medical reason for that, and it only happened then. It's never happened since.
Some people would argue with you about that whole thing. I'm not here to argue with you because I only have experiences with that in my sleep.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling you have those dreams you can't, and I'll actually wake up screaming, or in my head at least I'm screaming, going like this, trying to get myself to be able to move. And can you answer that for me? That's my mom calling, like, how do I get on Twitter? But I know I was talking.
There's actually a really good documentary called The Nightmare. It's all about sleep paralysis. It's on Netflix right now. So watch it.
Yeah, I will. We had a couple of people on, I don't know, about a week ago. I don't remember what we were talking about, but the subject of the Blab. But 2 people came on asking about that they'd had experiences of sleep paralysis or being awakened, feeling somebody was sitting on them. But at the same time, both of them said that they saw somebody standing next to them or on top of them during the experience. So in one guy was like, I don't tell anybody because I'm afraid nobody believes me. People think I'm crazy, the whole thing like that. So I don't know. I don't know what. Do you have any? If you actually saw somebody?
When I experienced it, I never saw anybody. I did hear somebody, but it was coming out. I was coming out of a sleep. So was I hearing somebody in my dream and remembered it as I woke, or what? The whole point of sleep paralysis is that your mind is, its perception of time is skewed. Just like when you dream and it seems like your dream takes hours, it's actually only a few seconds. That's just the way your brain works. And sleep paralysis is when you're coming out of that state and it feels like you can't move, and maybe you see things and you hear voices, but it's actually only taking a couple of seconds in real time.
Right.
So I never saw anything, but
in reference to that, the amount of time dreams take compared to actual real time here. I was telling you, I used to work with my dreams a lot. And one night I was trying to work with dreaming with my son. We had talked about meeting up in our dreams. And there was a lot of what I read, like if you wake up in your lucid dream, well, one, you're supposed to pay attention to what time it is you go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
You program your mind to wake up as a lucid dream in your dream. You go get the other person to wake them up to come join the dream. And I actually did all this in my dream. I noticed what time it was, woke up in my dream, went and woke up my son up, had a dream with him that seemed to go on for 24 hours. As soon as I woke up, I looked at the clock again, and it had been literally like 15 minutes. So that was, cool to see the amount of time, like you can live lifetimes in your dreams without, aging a minute in real life. It's cool. Lovin in Fontana is asking, how do you protect yourself? Do you want to come up? The seat is, people can come up now to the video if you want to come up and actually ask the question on the video.
While we're waiting, I may be offline for just a second because I want to open up this link that Monty Henry has provided for peer-reviewed publications. I just want to open that up so I can look at it later. So if somehow this kicks me off.
Okay,
I'm back. Thank you for sharing that, Monty.
So maybe you want to, maybe Lovin and Fontana is referring to when you go into an investigation. A lot of people feel of the spiritual nature, they feel you need to protect yourself. I'm guessing at what this question is in reference to.
I think that comes down to personal beliefs. If you think that you're going into an environment where you're going to be encountering something that could somehow do you harm, let me put it this way. I always used to tell people to be an investigation, if you want to say a prayer of protection, if you want to, whatever your religion is, it's not going to hurt anything. It's your beliefs. You're welcome to take a moment and do that for yourself. Me personally, I don't know. We've had discussions about my reckless personality before anyway, Christina. I always kind of felt like, if I'm going to be going into investigation and something's going to, the walls are going to start bleeding and, things are going to start flying around the room. Awesome. Let me get my camera ready.
Really great freaking story, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it comes down to a matter of personal belief. I have, had people, all different faiths, from Christian, Jewish, atheists. We've had Buddhists that have been on the team. Do I have a favorite device for detecting the energy of these entities? That comes down to the question of correlation and causation. And so there's been a lot of units sold on the basis of looking for electromagnetic fields. This is a completely separate question. Sorry, I don't know if that answered your question, Lovin of Fontana. But like I said, it always comes down to personal beliefs. Now, to Monty's question, do I have a favorite device for detecting the energy of these entities? The EMF field, which is what every device seems to be built around. Finding an anomalous electromagnetic field is not in and of itself evidence of paranormal activity. What we're looking for is correlation. So if we experience an event live, where we see something, fly across the room, or if we take a picture and there's something in the picture, and at the same time there's a measurable change in the electromagnetic field, then yes, that's something that we would be looking for. In terms of, do I have a favorite device? Look for one that is not made for ghost hunting. Like, don't buy your equipment from ghosthuntersstore.com, things like that. Look for one that's made for professional use. I used one that's used by engineers for Duke Energy to measure the strength of fields coming off of power lines, so that they know that where they can build a house in relation to power lines, so that people don't develop brain tumors. That was the one that I would use because that's specifically designed for, it's a high quality device for locating that specific type of energy, as opposed to some of these things you buy on, ghost hunter websites is just designed to, give you confirmation bias. It's shoddily made, and it allows you to, locate something and convince yourself that, something's going on when maybe it isn't.
That makes sense. So I have a question. I found at times when I've been around an energy that, so I'm on the other side of this on, I don't want to call it the spiritual side because I don't really like to qualify it that way, but more on the woo-woo side of seeing and feeling my own, definition and interpretation of spirits and or of activity, because I don't think everything is of the ghost or spirit nature, but it is sometimes even pieces of people of, that kind of break off to create a whole separate energy from our own personal energy that we walk around with. If that makes sense. I don't even know if that made sense with that description.
No, it does. And I do want to clarify, I'm not opposed to what you call the woo-woo side of things. There's subjective experience and there's objective experience. And, when we're trying to collect data, that's objective. But there are definitely things that we all see and experience, and even information that we get that is subjective in nature, and you can't necessarily present it for peer review as evidence, but that it's real. Talking about something that we've talked about off camera, you gave me information recently from a friend of mine that just recently passed away that no one in the world except for maybe 3 people could have possibly known. And, we can talk about that off air. And so, I know for a fact that from that one little piece of information, you were talking to him. Can I prove it? No. Can I present that in a journal? No. But, so yeah, long story short, I'm not opposed to the woo-woo. Sorry, right. Go ahead. What you were gonna say.
Okay. Thank you for the qualification. So my question is, when I'm in a situation, I'm going to say this story real short, and I might have already told you this, but I was called to this counselor's house in the false thing that I thought she wanted to refer clients to me, but actually she wanted to get me in her house because she felt there was a lot of spirits in the house. And as we were talking, she said, "Do you see them?" Well, I don't walk around open all the time because it's just too much for me. So as I started to look around, there was this little girl in front of her that was so angry. And apparently what the woman had been telling me is she thought that she collected spirits who had died violently and then ignored them. And the whole situation in the house was really kind of weird. Her dog was growling, like opened the door, the dog is growling at me. She had like one side of her face that like she had a lot of brain stuff going. There was a lot of stuff going on in the house. But one thing that did happen in that house is, excuse me, once I saw that girl in front of her, the girl who was a spirit seemed to be very pissed off because this woman had been ignoring her for a really long time. And once I opened the door of recognizing and acknowledging this little girl that was in front of me, the energy in the room completely changed to the point where you almost felt like you could touch it. it just rose. So, in my question to you is if you've ever felt this or if you have any like thoughts about it. When I'm in that situation, there's certain physical things that happen to me. I like whole body is like covered with goose flesh. I feel nauseous. I feel this ridiculous, unfounded fear. And it's a fear that's kind of outside of myself. It's not like I'm afraid of the situation, but there's a fear that rises. Like I can feel this. I don't know how to, like, if you put your hand in warm water, the water is warm, and it's not like your whole body is like really scared, but I can feel this fear that's kind of outside of me. Mm-hmm. And I'll feel off balance. So I have all these, sometimes there's other, because I'm very sensitive and empathic to, even what other people are feeling that are here. Mm-hmm. And in the response, because it was so palpable in the room, this woman literally got up on her chair. I didn't say a word about what was going on. This woman got up on her chair like there was a bunch of mice at her feet and she was scared to death. And she got up on the chair, got her feet like up in the chair and started yelling at me about how I brought this energy into her house. But so I, did this communication between her and the little girl, kind of did my thing with the little girl. So she laughed, and then the energy stopped. The woman sat down, and, then she started talking about all this other stuff she felt was in her house. But that experience that I had with the feel of that energy, I have that quite often. Mm-hmm. When I'm around things that aren't happy. You know what I mean? If it's a comfortable, like I was talking to your friend, there was certainly other stuff going on that I felt that day, but it wasn't that fear, or it wasn't, that extreme, reaction to an upset spirit. I don't know if you had anything, through your experiences or, working with other people that do what I do.
Okay. Well, first of all, a lot to comment on about what you just said.
Well, you can talk as much as you want, or if you don't want to. My main question was about the actual physical feelings.
Right. You didn't bring that energy into that woman's house any more than a radio brings a radio signal into someone's house.
I knew that.
All right. Just want you to not worry about that part.
No, I did. I actually turned around and looked at her and I said, "You're doing this. I'm not, like you, the partnership of the energy in your house is creating this. This has nothing to do with me," except I turned up the volume, I think.
Right. All right. So when we're in elementary school, we learn about the 5 senses, right? And science says there's way more than 5. They can actually, they may fall into 5 categories, but there's actually more like 130 senses that the human body is capable of receiving. And some of those are, things that you cannot see, hear, and touch, things like electromagnetic energy. I used to, when I was a kid, and this is nothing paranormal at all, but I had a thing where I couldn't walk through the TV section of a department store. When we went into Sears, I couldn't go anywhere near the TV section just because it was like nails on a chalkboard, just this, feeling because of all these TV sets being on, generating this electromagnetic field. I was sensitive to it. We know other animals that, sharks use electromagnetic field for navigation, things like that. So these things exist. We're talking about, known types of energy and that interact with the human body. Now, anything that the body interacts with can cause reactions. It cause different reactions in different people. So these things that you're talking about, these feelings of nauseousness, there's, headaches. None of that's uncommon. Your body is interacting with some type of energy. Now, there's also a psychological aspect as your mind is sort of translating this and interpreting it in different ways. There's psychosomatic symptoms as well. If you're feeling like, something is a negative energy or angry or unhappy or something like that, you're a very empathic person. That's translating into physical symptoms in your body.
Right.
So that doesn't seem to be strange to me at all. Have I ever physically encountered something like that? Maybe when I was younger, not so much as I was older. And a lot of that had to do with the more I became part of an organization and then running an organization, I had to involve myself. You talked about you can't be open all the time as when you do these investigations. I had to be sort of train myself to be closed all of the time to the point that it finally got to the point where I don't know how to open myself if I wanted to, because I was too busy with administrative stuff. I need to design this experiment this way. I need to control these particular variables. I need to select these team members for this particular investigation. I need to make sure that this person's behaving themselves and doing what I asked them to do, and not, going off on their own and doing something else and this, that, and the other. And as if you've ever run your own paranormal research group, you know what I'm talking about. And if you ever plan to, here's what you got in store. You're not going to get to do any of the fun stuff anymore. You're going to be entirely, driven by putting out fires. And so when I was younger, sure, I almost felt like, I could go to certain places and tell, this is before I was really even thinking scientifically, but I could go to a place and tell if this was really haunted or if it's just, stories or whatnot, just based on the feeling I got from it, just a gut feeling. Like I said, nothing scientific at all about that. Nothing, measurable or anything. But as I got older and as I got involved in other stuff, that became less and less part of it.
Right. Well, good. That makes sense what you're saying. And I was thinking that because I'm empathic and that's what I do, you know what I mean? It's not something that I want to go into a situation and I want to go into the situation and turn that on if that's the work I'm doing. So that was kind of helpful for me, because when I go into a situation, I'm open and I'm feeling, you're making me really think, because I go into a situation and I'm feeling what the other person is feeling, which causes a reaction in me. So I'm feeling their stuff and my stuff at the same time, which is what I talk to a lot of other healers about, because if we don't heal our stuff and get straight with our stuff, then when we feel other people's stuff, it all gets messed up together.
But let me put it to you this way. If you were around a person who was a negative influence on you, who was just a negative person all the time, always super critical, this, that, and the other, to the point that it was bringing you down and causing physiological changes in you.
I had a marriage like that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Wasn't trying to open up that particular can of worms, but okay. So here
No, it's closed.
You would eventually have to make a decision to either remove yourself from that situation or close yourself off from it. And you close yourself off from it by not listening to them, not letting what they say in. And I know easier said than done. Okay, so there's no difference between that and information we may be receiving through some other means, directly into our brains. You have to make a choice. And this kind of goes back to the question of how do you protect yourself? You have to make a choice that I can observe this, but I'm not going to let it in. And if it gets to be too much and you can't shut it out, you remove yourself from the situation.
Which I want to say this when you shut yourself off so completely, then that could be a problem with other aspects of your life, right? Because I think it works both ways, because I used to be, before I understood how to control some of my sensitivity, it would affect my relationships, because I would impose my feelings on the other people, thinking that their feelings were my feelings because I felt both sides of it. Do you know what I mean? It would get confused. So coming back to the middle, I'm a little bit better now, able to differentiate what's my stuff and what's their stuff. Right. So I would shutting off yourself to be able to protect yourself and to be able to, carry on your business on the business end of it. Maybe that sometimes would get cumbersome in the opposite direction, affecting how you carry on your real life. I don't know, just a thought.
Well, fair enough. And I feel like at that point, with me especially, we're talking about more than just paranormal stuff. But that's for a conversation for another.
I'm not going to go there, but I'm just saying.
A conversation for another time.
But just for the people out there listening, I think it can work both ways. Having too great of a sensitivity for the people who are sensitive to other people's stuff, like empaths, and on the other side of protecting whatever for yourself. There's a range, a dial of complete openness and complete self-protection. So it's probably healthy to be in the middle for those of you listening that are sensitive to stuff like this, because I think it is a side effect when you're working with things that, are, you can't see or can't prove or whatever. Everybody has varying degrees of how they handle it.
Right.
In their own personal self. So I think that's important. It was very important for me. And I don't think I've really completely figured it out, but I can talk a little bit more about it and it makes sense. That's about all.
Right.
So is there anybody out there that wants to come in on video? We're probably not going to be on for too much longer, but I'd love to have, another face up here if you have any questions. We can talk about my fuzzy pants if you want.
I was not going to say anything, but you brought it up.
When I'm working on video, I don't really have to worry about what I have on from the waist down.
Yeah, I'm not even wearing pants. So. I'm just kidding.
That's what happens when you work from home. So I see there's a lot of people out there. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody want to come up on video? You have to be a little tired of us just sitting here talking back and forth. Anybody have their own stories? Sometimes people are a little shy. It's also Saturday morning, so sometimes you hear people say, my hair isn't right. Oh, look, my mom is, good. My mom just finally got on. I see her following me. Hi, are you Monty or Henry?
Yeah, Monty Henry. Yeah, first name, last name, they all the same. Doesn't matter.
Very nice.
How you doing?
Coming up.
Pretty good. How you doing?
Good.
I think.
Did you have a question?
Well, it's probably more of a statement than anything. I think it's good that you guys are. Well, let me see. Did you answer the question, or what did you think about the article in relation to? I
haven't had a chance to read it yet. I pulled it up and I bookmarked it. And I'm going to read it when we go off air.
Yes, it's very, very comprehensive, and I think the good news is there are some scientists or physicists even that are taking a very practical approach to trying to figure out whether that there's any statistically reliable, if I get the word out, information about what's actually happening with some of this phenomena, and people like Dean Radin, Diane Hennessy Powell, Michael Persinger. A lot of these people are doing a lot of study in these areas, and I think the audience or the viewers should really take a look at what happens when you take a scientific approach to trying to figure out whether or not there's any statistically reliable information that correlates or determines whether or not there's any validity to the claims or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like I said, I'm going to read that when we go off air, and I just followed you on Twitter, so I'm going to follow up with you after I've done so we can have some conversation about it.
Yeah, no big deal. You're talking about tools that one could potentially use to determine whether or not there's anything valid going on or not. Mm-hmm. Is your favorite tool, sound like your favorite tool? One of your favorite tools might be the pendulum.
No, that was actually I was very skeptical of it when I used it. It's one of the few things where I've seen something that was completely unexplainable by other means, because I can't, a lot of the things we experience are so minor. Some of the events that you can't explain them by a draft or a house settling or things like that. With the time that I was using the pendulum and it swung out to 45-degree angle and hung there,
right?
There was no other way that I could explain that. I've not really used them since, because I'm looking for things that are more quantifiable, and basically I'm not necessarily looking for evidence so much as I'm looking for correlations. So it's not that I'm trying to prove to the world and first of all, I haven't done this in, like I said, 3 or 4 years. I've been out of the game for a while. But when I was, it's not like I was trying to prove to the world this exists, here's my proof. Because especially in this modern day and age with technology, to a true skeptic, no amount of evidence is ever going to be sufficient. And to a believer, no amount of evidence is necessary. So that wasn't the point. What I was trying to do was I was trying to get to the mechanism. I was trying to find correlations between here's an event that happened, here's what the changes were in the environment. Was there a change in temperature? Was there a change in humidity? Was there a change in air ionization? Was there a change in electromagnetic field? Things like that.
Is that the same as trying to rule out things that could potentially be causing the problem? Is that the same thing?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Debunking is the first step in any investigation. It has to be the first step in any investigation. You have to work deductively.
Well, that's probably the best approach. I typically try to rule out things that are going on. I work in a totally different field. And but we have skeptics and we have paranoid people and all of these types of people in the spy industry, and people are typically they'll make up or they'll imagine things. So we typically take the same approach. We want to rule out anything as much as possible, and then whatever is left would typically be the cause of the problem. So yeah, as long as we can find out what's not causing the problem,
right?
Yeah, and nail that down, then typically whatever's left would probably more than likely causing a problem for the people. But yeah, I commend you guys for tackling this very esoteric subject, and it's something that not a lot of people can relate to. And those tests, I think there's a person by the name of Rupert Sheldrake. He's again taking a very, very structured, a very scientific approach to determining helping people determine whether or not they have psychic capabilities. So if you guys, I think there's a lot of situations. It's kind of funny because, go ahead, I'm sorry.
What was his name? The person you're talking about?
Rupert Sheldrake. If
you look in the panes on the left, I'm not familiar with Blab, what do you call it, but over on the left side of your screen, he's provided a link here. It says Online Paranormal Abilities Testing Portal.
Yeah, Rupert Sheldrake is actually providing that those tests, and you should look at it, Christina, when you get a chance. I've taken a look at it myself because I wanted to, before I publish anything on my website, I like to vet the material and the people as much as possible. Right. And it's very interesting. One of the tests, I think, how sometimes when you're thinking about your mother, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden she calls, right? And we always say, "Oh yeah, I was thinking about you," and you called her, right, or something, to that extent. So I think Rupert decided, maybe there's something to that. Maybe prior to that phone call coming in, we made some sort of connection or something, and got an idea that person was concerned about us, or we should be concerned about them. So he devised a number of tests where there are some blind test where you could, figure out whether or not this is random or not. So anyway, that's one of the tests that he's put together. And I think it's kind of interesting for those people who think there's some phenomena. Have you ever heard of the, Jim, the phenomena of having certain times of day or night according to certain things about the earth itself that may be conducive to, can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think a lot of people don't understand that Las Vegas actually has taken upon themselves to look into this, because certain gambling events seem to be more favorable during certain time people. And if you're not careful, all the slots will be hitting at certain times of the day or night.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So certain times of day or night, basically the earth, we're protected from solar radiation by something called the magnetosphere.
Right.
The Earth has a solid iron inner core and a molten outer core, and as the iron inner core spins, it creates a magnetic field. Now, what happens is during the day, the side of the Earth that is facing the sun, that magnetosphere is being compressed by solar radiation. And then as the Earth rotates, the side that's facing away from the Earth, the magnetosphere sort of expands. So it's more sort of, rather than being a sphere, it's more sort of teardrop shaped.
Okay.
And as that magnetosphere gets compressed, it can create interference. So if you are dealing with any type of information transfer through any type of electromagnetic. Try that again.
Me too. I know.
And that's a spectrum that goes all the way, from X-rays, microwaves, all the way up to gamma rays, visible
exactly,
being one small part of it. If there's any sort of information transfer that's occurring through the electromagnetic spectrum, the more compressed the magnetosphere is, the more interference you're going to get. It's typically why paranormal investigations are done at night, because the magnetosphere is more quiet.
Okay.
And so you can get, clearer signals. It's the same reason why AM signals on the radio will travel, hundreds and hundreds of miles at nighttime where they won't at the day. Yeah, if anybody even has an AM radio anymore in this day and age.
Right.
At nighttime, you can pick up radio stations from Cleveland, Ohio.
Exactly.
Because of that. So if someone was, say, making a prediction on roulette or something like that, and they were receiving their information somehow, some way, mentally,
right,
they may be more likely to get a clearer signal at certain parts of the day, and as opposed to others. I know that the Ryan Research Center, not with gambling, but with something very similar. They used to have a dice rolling machine, and that was part of their
right.
That you could influence the roll of the dice. And they found the same thing, that, there was a higher percentage of success at night than there was during the daytime.
Can you talk about random event generators? I think Princeton University did a lot of work with random event generators in terms of how people are somehow more perceptive. They're very perceptive in terms of when there's going to be major events. I think there's even been studies where certain animals, ahead of a earthquake or certain natural events, they would somehow pick up vibrations and vacate certain areas where they were inhabiting, and also a lot of times people would somehow also get an idea that there's a major event coming, and certain things would be happening at that time with people.
Well, that plays into what we were talking about earlier. With you really have more than just five senses, and I'm not even talking about the traditional sixth sense being ESP. Your body's attuned to much more things and has nerve receptors for more things than just the five senses that you learned about in grade school. We know for a fact that animals can detect certain events, such as earthquakes ahead of time, because they're more sensitive to changes in the environment. We can tell.
That animal has decided it's time to sleep right there.
My cat's been right outside the door, clawing at the door to get in for a while now. But I know the people that do that, the dogs are going to go nuts and hold them off.
No, we don't need that. I'm sorry.
So we know that these senses exist. We know that animals are more perceptive to change the environment, and that some humans may be more sensitive to the same things. Now, in terms of statistical probability of predicting major events versus minor events, some of that there may be something to. Some of it may just be confirmation bias. For example, if you took the number of people ahead of time on September 10th, 2001, and who had a bad feeling about something, and then September 11th happened, then after the fact, you have sort of a confirmation bias of, all these people predicted something was coming up. Can they be more specific about what is going to happen? That's where the question is. So if you ask those same people on September 10th, this thing you have a bad feeling about, what do you think is going to happen? Because then you get into the realm of any particular day. If you polled a random section of the population and said, do you have a bad feeling something's going to happen tomorrow? Significant portion of them are going to say yes. But it may just be, I've got a bad feeling, and then the next day, they get a parking ticket, or they.
Right. Well, let me ask you a question. I think with the Princeton study with the random event generators, as part of the Global Consciousness project, I thought they placed those machines all over the planet, and they were collecting information ahead of certain events, and they try to look for correlations, because I think ordinarily the random event generators, they would be all over the map. They would be truly random. But according to the study,
what are they measuring with these machines? Like what?
Yeah. let me finish my thought, and I'll try to remember what they were trying to measure. It's a good question. Basically, these machines are actually random in nature. Okay, that's the way they're designed. But
if I remember correctly, they're generating random numbers.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what they're doing.
In a certain range.
Right, and as long as they're random, they're fine. That means absolutely nothing is influencing them. But on certain occasions, like 9/11, like some major earthquakes or whatever, the death of Princess Diana, I think, was one event that made the machines go crazy. So there's probably at least 3 major events that are well documented in addition to others. But anyway, the Princeton study focused on why or how did we get the random event generators to all of a sudden stop being so random and start to show more consistency as far as certain numbers or certain patterns or something as compared to the complete randomness. And I think that was their way of eliminating the confirmation bias, as far as I can tell.
If I recall, now it's been a while since I've read about this. It's probably been 10 years or so since I read about this.
Right.
If I recall, the idea is that one of the tests for paranormal abilities is looking at a random number generator and making simple predictions on based of, is it going to be higher than 50, lower than 50, things like that. And then it generates a random number. And one of the PK tests is, can you influence
exactly,
whether the number goes down or whether the number goes up. And so the idea of these random number generators is that somehow people around the world would sort of be in tune with each other and
exactly right
outcome of these random number generators one way or the other. So if you had random number generators generating a number between 1 and 1,000, then if you looked at the distribution of those numbers on a chart, if it really is generating random numbers, there should be an even distribution of all numbers between 1 and 1,000.
That's true.
If you see a spike in one area or the other, that's a statistical anomaly. And do those spikes correlate with significant events such as 9/11 or such as the death of Princess Diana or things like that?
Right. I hope that maybe answered the question, Christina, because I don't know exactly the way to explain what they were measuring.
It does. I understand more about what you're talking about as far as the numbers are random. So it's just shooting out random numbers.
Yes,
it's not actually measuring something. So I get that.
Right.
My question is, how does whatever the change in energy
numbers
or whatever that's creating a change in the numbers, what makes it go up or what makes it go down? Or do we even know that? Do they even know that?
People that are participating in the study would ask to be correlate their feelings on this scale. So, if they have, if they're feeling bad, if they feel like something bad's going to happen, they're just asked to think of low numbers or high numbers. I forget which was which, but they would be asked to think about numbers in that particular range. And if people, had a good feeling about things, they'd be asked to think about numbers in high range. If there was no correlation at all, like I said, you would expect an even distribution of numbers.
Right.
One practical product that I think that same group out of Princeton came up with, they call it a type of psychic lamp. Remember the old mood rings and some of the lava lamps that we had in the 60s? You guys are going to date yourself now, see?
I'm ashamed
to admit I remember that.
It's too late. Anyway, there's a psychic lamp that this team came out with, and it's the same principle. Ordinarily, the colorations of the lamps would be all over the map. There wouldn't be any type of pattern, real sequencing or anything like that you could put your finger on. I think the idea behind taking the technology out of the random event generator and putting it into the lamp was to try and see if I focus hard enough on causing that lamp to show certain colors that I wanted to see, then that supposedly would be a way that I could determine whether or not I'm making that lamp show certain colors. Have you heard of that before?
I've heard of studies similar to that, and what we have found, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the poltergeist phenomena.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up next, because it seems like there should be a correlation between activity and high numbers.
That's what they're trying to find out with the lamp. It's an actual product, and it's kind of neat in terms of, because the team supposedly they have the expertise, and they knew enough about the random event generator technology to put it in the lamp.
Typically speaking, with poltergeist activity, the thought is that you can't consciously control something, but what would be interesting to do with that lamp, an interesting experiment, would be to see, if you can focus on changing the color of that lamp, and focus on it for a certain amount of time, and then completely forget about it, go off, do something else, wash the dishes or whatever, and then see if it changes color while you're not thinking about it. Because the idea being is that a lot of this that we're able to exert is subconscious. I don't know. It'd be interesting. I'm also, I'd be curious to know how they maintain the random nature, taking it out of the computer and put it into some of the technology. Because one of the problems with generating random numbers is finding an algorithm that actually truly generates random numbers. I know that just
that's true.
Mathematically, they've had problems with that. So I'd be interested in learning more about that. I'm not as up on that as obviously as you are. But I'd be interested in finding out more about it.
Well, I think I put a link. Maybe I could put a link to the Global Consciousness Project, and you probably were very interested to see that. They actually have a map in terms of where these random event generators are on the planet, and you can visually take a look at whether or not there's any correlations or any activities that you can see that you might be able to assign to certain events that are going on or not going on or something like that. But it sounds like you guys are really adding a lot of value and giving a lot of information out to people, and I really enjoyed participating in this. I think you should have maybe some series going on. This is probably go on forever. I love this topic.
Thank you, Monty, for being here and sharing. You shared some very valuable information.
Thank you. I'll see if I can find that link to the Global Consciousness Project, and we'll get that in there. Okay.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Take care. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Do you think we should wrap it up, or you want to?
Sure.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your information, and I got to know you more better. That's really good English. I got to know you better.
I'm not a language arts teacher. Don't worry about it.
I know. I was thinking that. That's what was in my head. I will stay on just for one more minute. If there's anybody out there that has any last minute questions or information that you'd like to know more about either one of us, I posted my website. I do intuitive readings. I have clinic hours usually most weekdays, because sometimes I take a day off, but Monday through Friday from noontime to 4. I'm up here on Blab quite a lot with all kinds of different shows going on. And I just posted a bunch of yoga and meditation classes that are virtual on my website also. Do you have any last parting words?
Your yoga sessions seem awesome. My flexibility is about I can do that, and that's about it. So
you don't have to be bendy to do yoga. Actually, these yoga classes are geared towards unraveling the stress in your body. So it's not at all. It's very
so much to unravel.
A little at a time.
Okay.
A little at a time. All right. Well, everybody have a great Saturday. Thanks. You have a good day too. And thank you for listening, and just keep an eye out for more posts for more shows.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.